and Ray Bucati and I can kind of go through what Mercy House looks like today and how faith has impacted that. And then we're going to go into a question and answer portion. So if during the course of the conversation, any questions come up that you're like, oh, I would love to know this, or why is this like this? Please feel free to just drop a line in the chat to our host, Mercy House, and send those questions into us so that we can make sure to get to them if we have time. And then after that, we're going to give me just a few moments to let you all know what Help Them Home is on a bigger scale, and how you as an individual can get involved in that. So yeah, that's what to expect. So I think we can probably get started here. So again, everyone, welcome to our last and final installment of our Help Them Home Zoomcast. I want to let Ray Bucati just kind of give a quick hello and his name and how long he's been with Mercy House, maybe.
Sure. Thanks, Jacob. Yeah. Hello, everybody. Hope you can hear me all right. I've been a volunteer board member for Mercy House for over 15 years, actually. I retired from about 10 years ago from my job as a corporate lawyer and executive with Western Digital here in Orange County. And since then, I've had a lot more time to become involved in Mercy House. And I became involved in Mercy House many years ago when a friend of mine at Western Digital just asked me if I'd consider getting involved. And so I was at a point in my career where I could contribute more of my time and a lot better than when I was a young, busy lawyer. And I met Larry Haynes, CEO, and really impressed with his passion and his really business-minded approach to the problem of ending homelessness and the work of Mercy House. Of course, I met Father Jerome, who's a wonderful person, really inspirational leader. And I felt like this was a team that I really wanted to sort of be part of to work on the problem of ending homelessness. The cause of ending homelessness is also consistent with my upbringing in the Catholic faith, because this is a big part of Catholic social teaching, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But anyway, that's how I first got involved, Jacob.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ray. So I guess without further ado, I wanted to first go to this video that Father Jerome had sent in to us. So sorry about that. I wanted to go to this video that Father Jerome had sent in to us. It just talks a little bit about.
Looks like we've lost Jacob. Jacob seems to have been frozen. There you go. You're back now, Jacob.
Oh, sorry about that, everyone. I was just saying we would love to go to this first video that Father Jerome sends about the history of Mercy House.
Mm-hmm.
When I founded Mercy House, my desire was to help those who were marginalized and had no place to turn to, realizing, there go I, but for the grace of God. Since then, we have been blessed to provide shelter and housing and programs for over 30 years. I first became aware of the homeless population when I was living as a parish priest at the local Catholic church. Their need was obvious, but their care was lacking. So I began to respond to their need. I sent letters to everyone in my father's database and to many friends, asking for help for homeless individuals. And God provided. God's providential direction opened up the way with generous donors, and God continues to provide for us to this day. Initially, I had no expectation for growth or expansion when we opened our doors, but along the way, God simply provided the opportunities and graces for our agency to grow as we operated more facilities and programs. We started in 1990 serving 10 homeless men at our first facility. As we grew over many years, our agency now has thousands who benefit in our many facilities and programs with outreach, shelter, and permanent housing for men, women, and families. Just the past year, we ended the homelessness of 1,684 individuals. Our hope and our goal is to assist people struggling for a better and more productive life.
That's so great. So we're really happy that Father Jerome was able to send that in. He he is so passionate about this issue, and dedicating over 30 years to this mission has really helped him gain a much better understanding of the issue broadly. And one of the other questions that we get a lot, and we wanted him to address, was how did Mercy House get its name? And so we're actually going to go to one more video real quick here, and then let him talk about that, because again, it's a real inspiration to hear him talk about this. If we could just play that next video.
Many people ask me how we got the name for our agency. Well, the truth is that I chose it. The name Mercy House for our agency to highlight a sense of mercy, of compassion in serving our residents and clients, knowing that each of them has their own history and personal life story. Mercy calls us to serve with care, to be kind toward those we serve. In this way, we show respect for each person, acknowledging their dignity and self-esteem as a child of God. The word house reminds us to provide care and comfort in the house or facility in which our residents live, reminding us of our logo, which says, "We help people find their way back home." The homeless person living on the streets, in a car, in a garage, is often alone. We hope to bring mercy, compassion to their suffering and their being neglected. We always remember that our clients are not a number or a statistic, but a person with their own story and their own life history. What has been most surprising about Mercy House is its growth far beyond any expectations. We now have facilities in Ventura, Oxnard, Los Angeles County, San Bernardino, Riverside, Bakersfield, Orange County, and Arizona, and we are still growing.
So that's so great. I mean, we really do love hearing from Father Jerome, and hearing about how he decided to choose the name, and really the broader thing about how his faith has impacted him to do this work, and obviously through the name Mercy, we really get that. So one of the things that we wanted to kind of segue into now was talking about the fact that this organization has been around for over 30 years, and we've seen so much growth, and we're glad to be joined here by our Vice Chair, Ray Bucati, because he's been around for a good portion of that time, and he's even just in him not being here the entire time, but maybe half that time, and seeing the amount of growth that we've had since then. I really just wanted to just kick it over to Ray and let him talk a little bit about maybe why you joined the board, and why this issue speaks to you so much.
Yeah, and it's really great, Jacob. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it. It's fun seeing all those old pictures of Father Jerome and Larry, and how much the organization has changed over the years. In fact, when I started on the board, we had only one walk-in center and 3 transitional housing programs. I think Regina House, Joseph House, and Emmanuel House, that were really small. And at the time, we operated no emergency shelters or permanent housing. In fact, at the time, the best practices nationwide in serving the homeless suggested that transitional housing was the best way to approach this problem. And transitional housing is where you provide housing for a homeless person, formerly homeless person, for maybe 6, 9, or 12 months, along with supportive services to allow someone to sort of get off the street, work on any disabling conditions they might have, such as mental illness or substance abuse, look for a job, and then look for permanent housing while they're in transitional housing. But as more sort of nationwide research evolved and our learning evolved, it became more common to provide different forms of housing programs. And Mercy House adjusted as a result. So over the years, the national model has moved to a rapid rehousing model, so that the homeless clients could move directly from the street into so-called permanent housing situation, so that they could avoid the step of first going into transitional housing. Just so folks know, permanent housing just means it's permanent so long as the client pays the rent. But having permanent housing really allows a client to sort of have a more stable long-term environment while they work on any disabling conditions they might have. So one of the things I love about Mercy House is it's driven by the sort of the data, the research, and focuses on sort of what works and what doesn't work to end homelessness. So we shifted over time to more of an emphasis on permanent housing with supportive services. Our focus is using emergency shelters, which we operate, and I'll talk about in a minute, as navigation centers to quickly sort of place the homeless into stable, permanent supportive housing. And so now that we've sort of refined our approach over the years, Mercy House has been really successful, as you could tell from the video that Father Jerome had about all the different programs we have. We've grown significantly. We now have programs in California and Arizona and in 7 counties and I think 32 or 33 cities. Maybe, we offer a full range of homeless programs, and maybe I'll take a minute just to outline these programs briefly, if that's all right, Jacob.
Absolutely.
Great, yeah. So we offer the outreach, prevention, emergency shelters, transitional housing, rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and permanent housing. That's all nomenclature that's pretty well known to people in the field, but I thought if I described it briefly. First, outreach is Mercy House partners with several local cities to provide street outreach services. This allows us to connect with people on the streets and connect with them to services that they might need. Next, prevention, as you might expect, means generally that when a household has actually received an eviction notice and has no other resources, we provide financial assistance for the back rent and case management. And that's really great because the idea is to catch the household before they lose stability and enter the homelessness sort of system on the street. Of course, I think the next category I mentioned is emergency shelters, and that's pretty well understood by most of you, I'm sure. And that's really short-term temporary housing locations for just the most urgent needs of the homeless. I think Mercy House operates currently over 10 emergency shelters for different cities in California. These shelters typically have what's known as very, very low barriers to entry. Pretty much anyone can come in, and it's really a last refuge for many homeless people. In these shelters, as I mentioned, we sort of start the process of connecting clients to social services and really developing an individual housing plan for that person, that individual. And there's really a strong focus on, as I mentioned, providing or finding permanent housing for the client. I think I mentioned transitional housing already. That's a program that provides temporary residence and supportive services, and that's what we started doing 30 years ago. But ideally, that just focuses as a conduit to finding a more permanent housing solution. Then I mentioned a newer approach is rapid rehousing. That's a really promising alternative to emergency shelters and to transitional housing. In this program, as I mentioned, the individual is currently on the streets and goes right into an apartment and immediately starts paying rent and working on the challenges that they face. As I mentioned, it's a permanent program, and they receive supportive services for a limited time. So they're not just thrown into a house without any support, but they have a lot of services. That's rapid rehousing. And I guess permanent supportive housing is really the last category. It's similar to rapid rehousing, but it's geared to those people who are chronically homeless. These are individuals who have had long periods of homelessness and a disability, and they often require a much higher level of care than others. So this permanent supportive housing program is really the most intensive. It includes a lot of long-term supportive services, but it's really shown to have a great success for these clients who are really generally more difficult to serve in our other programs. And finally, a variation on that is permanent housing, which is slightly different because it's typically available for individuals who are not chronically homeless, and so the level of services provided is lower. So anyway, Jacob, that's a lot of change in the time that I've been on the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even just looking at the pictures, it's not just the color of Larry's hair that has changed so much, right? I mean, looking at those old pictures, it looks like he had like a full head of dark hair.
I hope he's not watching, Jacob. He could.
Yeah, I know. I see that it's like his mom's on the call, so I mean, she'll obviously note that he's aged while he's here in a good way. In a good way.
Very proud.
But anyways, I mean, this agency has gone through so much growth. I mean, I joined the organization about almost 6 years ago, and at the time, we probably had half of the staff that we have now, and maybe even less. We're a pretty massive organization, and we're really just growing. We're happy for the growth because it means that we can continue to serve more folks. I think we are well over 400 employees, and probably by the end of this year, we might be closer to 500. And so, yeah, with every new staff member, with every new contract that we get, we know that that translates into another person who's on the street currently getting access to housing, hopefully. So, yeah, I mean, again, we have changed so much in the past 30 years. And I think that with that change, the philosophy and the approach that we take to ending homelessness has obviously changed. So, Ray, I was wondering if maybe you could talk about how maybe your view on homelessness has changed since joining the board, or in the past years that you've been on the board, and maybe talk about whether that's a philosophical change or a change in misconceptions or that kind of thing. So maybe talk a little bit about that if you could.
Yeah, sure, Jacob. My thoughts on homelessness have changed in really two big ways. And I thought about this a lot. First, yeah, I learned that I have had a lot of misconceptions about the homeless. And I also learned that I really shouldn't think of sort of the homeless as one specific type of person. We tend to talk about the homeless, and that's convenient, but you have to unpack that and understand there's not just one type of homeless person. There's many types of homelessness, which I didn't understand when I first got involved. I've learned that people become homeless for a variety of reasons. There's the chronically homeless individuals whom I mentioned who've lived on the street for years, and there's folks who are just what they call acutely homeless, and these people are newly homeless due to some kind of a crisis. Could be domestic violence, a number of things. Anyway, Mercy House has developed programs and approaches to serve the entire homeless population in dignified ways that fit their individual specific needs. So as I mentioned, for some that it can be something as simple as short-term rental assistance, but for others it can be an apartment with permanent supportive housing and case management services that might very well continue for the rest of their lives. So I've learned that there, just as I said, many faces of homelessness. The people you see on street corners who may look like they have serious issues are probably chronically homeless, and these people are certainly the most vulnerable. Yeah, but sadly, they're only one face of the homeless. We don't see the people sleeping in their cars every night or sleeping on a friend's couch or in a park, but they're there and they need our help too. So I've learned that homelessness has many faces. The other thing I learned is that I had many misconceptions about the homeless. Frankly, one of them I was really surprised to learn when I looked into the last what they call point in time survey that was done in Orange County, that 38% of the people living on the streets unsheltered reported that they were homeless for the first time in the previous 12 months. That was astounding to me. That was 38% of the people on the street were first-time homeless. I guess I had really thought that most of the homeless were probably the chronically homeless that I see, but I was really wrong. Another misconception I had was that I sort of thought almost all the homeless have to be sort of mentally ill or have a substance abuse problem. But I learned really the majority of the homeless don't have any mental health or substance abuse problems. I think some estimates say that around 20 to 30% of the homeless have substance abuse problems, and maybe 25-30% have mental health issues. Sometimes, of course, that overlaps. That's not what I expected when I first started working at Mercy House. I also didn't really know what to expect when I first volunteered to work in an emergency shelter. Once I got over my sort of initial hesitancy and I worked there, I began to look at the homeless a lot differently. Like before going to the shelter, I thought maybe everyone would look like someone who'd been living on the street for a long time, maybe dirty clothes, dirty hair, but I was really wrong. I realized that most people there didn't look like street people, and instead they looked like they could be, my cousin, my aunt, my uncle, or someone you might walk past in the mall. The clients there were like of all ages and all backgrounds. And Jacob, I guess when I volunteered in a shelter for families, I really started to realize I had a lot of misconceptions about the homeless. It was heart-wrenching to see the young children and families there doing the best they could living in a shelter. So I was really, really surprised by that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I think that's such a helpful distinction to make, that the homeless community isn't just a monolith of of one type of person, but rather just of varying degrees of experience and backgrounds and barriers that they face. And so kind of going on that note, what are some of the barriers that you've seen people who are experiencing homelessness deal with? And obviously you volunteered in our shelters before, and you obviously get updated on what our clients are going through. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I guess, some of the most obvious barriers are that the homeless face are the limited access to food and hygiene. They don't have access to bathrooms and showers. But another thing I didn't really fully appreciate was that they have to carry all their earthly possessions with them wherever they go. I remember the La Palma check-in center that was really helpful, providing storage for the homeless who lived in the park there. Basically, whenever they leave, a homeless person leaves, temporarily, and they leave their stuff on a bench or in a park, it might get stolen or thrown away if they leave it and go anywhere. So it's a real burden to have to carry everything they have with everywhere you go. So, but Jacob, I know you were involved in that La Palma project, I think, and I know you've had a lot of different jobs at Mercy House, and I thought maybe, I know you've worked really closely with the homeless. I thought maybe I could turn the question around on you and say, hey, what are some of the barriers that you've seen the homeless face, Jacob, in the work you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, you named a bunch of them right there, right? Like folks trying to get from place to place, but having to take into consideration that they need to carry all their belongings with them because they don't necessarily have easily accessible storage. They're going to need to always be thinking about where can I get my next meal? So if they are going to travel to the county clerk office in Santa Ana or Fullerton or Anaheim, is there going to be a free meal around it that they can get? And if not, then what provisions are they going to need to put in place so that they can make sure they can eat that day? And on top of it, they need to make sure that their round trip is going to allow them to get back to wherever they're going to sleep that night, because they a lot of times folks will kind of carve out a space where they know they feel safe and they feel comfortable, and they want to make sure that they're there so that they can at least get a few hours of rest. And along with that, let's just take this example where someone is going to let's just someone's going to get a job. They're going to make sure that they have an ID. So in order to get an ID, you need to have other proof of documentation that you are who you say you are. And so then that means requires them either getting their birth certificate from again the county clerk office, or getting some other form of identification from the DMV. And so it's just, they need one thing to get the other thing, but in order to do that, it's a very time-consuming process. I mean, I don't know if any of you on the call have ever had a difficult experience at the DMV, and if you haven't, then wow, you're lucky. But how much more difficult is that experience if all of your belongings are on you and you haven't showered, so you feel self-conscious about, maybe you smell, or maybe you're feeling just kind of self-conscious about that. Not to mention, again, you could be hungry and tired. And again, even just making this practical on an individual level, when I'm hungry and tired, I'm not the most cheery of people, but having all these other stressors and all these other things going on, how much more so would that be the case? And then again, just going from place to place on bus, and the looks that people often get if they're seen as being homeless. So there's just all these other factors that go into play when they're literally just trying to do the most simple thing of showing up to a job interview, or trying to apply for disability, or even just going to get a meal. And so the barriers are far even beyond what I've experienced, what I've shared about today. And a lot of times, if we were to come across someone and we're like, oh, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just get a job? Why don't you just do that thing that we know you need to do? It's under the guise that they haven't already tried that and failed in all these other ways because of all these other things. And so I really just share that because it's a good reminder to us that there are so many barriers that folks experience. And it's our role in Mercy House to help limit some of those barriers, or to remove some of those barriers, to make it easier for them to
yeah, I mean, the simplest of things for us with homes can become a huge obstacle to the homeless. Just getting transportation. I mean, getting food. It's really an eye opener, Jacob. thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So lastly, I kind of wanted to switch gears here and just kind of end with one more video from Father Jerome about really how his faith has impacted this work. We've talked a lot about Mercy House and where we were and where we're going, and some of these other things. And I would love to hear how Father Jerome's faith has led him to do this work. So we actually have a video here that hopefully we can queue up and share.
We have come to know that our real concern is not homelessness, but rather housing. Housing that provides people with permanent, adequate, and dignified living. Each year, all of us at Mercy House find ourselves reaching out to serve more and more people with a hope to end being homeless. We see this hope in the words of Jesus. Matthew's Gospel, chapter 25, shows us that we are called to care for those who are hungry, thirsty, strangers, naked, sick, or in prison. Jesus tells us to reach out to those in need. He says, "As you did it to one of the least of these, my brethren, you did it to me." Jesus is saying that we see him in the poor. There are many people who need housing, care, direction, and hope in their lives, and Mercy House is determined to serve them well. Each person we serve was created by God and has dignity and a unique personal story. Each of our clients and residents have a history. They have a family. They have difficulties and accomplishments, vices and virtues, successes and failures, just like you and me. But one thing that we have that they do not have is a place to call home. And this is what we provide for them, a way back home. This is what our staff, our volunteers, our board of directors do. Provide for them a way back home to discover or rediscover their inherent dignity. In this way, people's lives are changed. With their renewed lives filled with hope, we are particularly proud of our clients and residents for their resilience and for their commitment to embrace the opportunities we provide at Mercy House. Thank you for your trust in our work and for helping us to carry out our vision to end homelessness.
That's so cool. I love, again, I said it before and I'll say it again, but I love hearing Father Jerome talk about how his faith has impacted his work. I mean, it has required a tremendous amount of self-sacrifice for really everyone who does this work. And we have a number of staff members on this call who get that. And, I also just want to be clear here too, although we were started by Father Jerome and faith has just flown through all of us as we do this work in one way or another. We are, publicly funded in a lot of ways. And so, I know that we don't always get to share our faith or we always don't have to, but I would rather say we don't always have to share our faith so explicitly, because what we're doing, God's love is shown through the work that we're doing. And I think that's just such a cool thing. And I know that Father Jerome is just really, really helped us instill that in us. So Ray, I kind of wanted to ask you, how do you feel that your faith has impacted your work?
Yeah, Jacob, I guess my faith has really made me receptive to the idea of giving back, the idea of Christian service. A charitable cause like helping the homeless really resonates with me because it's really a basic human need. It resonates with me more than other charitable causes like education or the arts. I'm drawn to helping in this basic way. And my faith as Catholics, we're sort of taught in like 5th grade in the Baltimore Catechism was, our purpose on this earth is to know, love, and serve God in this world so we can be with him for all of eternity in the next. I mean, that's the sort of a classic definition of our purpose on earth. And not all of us can be called to serve in the religious life like, Father Jerome, of course. And we can't all serve God that way, but we can put our talents, whatever they might be, to the service of God in some other way. As a corporate lawyer, I really had no idea about the best way to serve the homeless. But I did feel like at the board level, I could contribute my skills and use my background to maybe add some value to the effort in that way. And Jacob, in talking about this presentation today, you first asked me about, what is Catholic social teaching? And of course, I Googled it and I found this summary, which is on the U.S. Catholic Bishops website, which starts with this really key principle. And if you allow me, I'll just read the first sentences. It says, "The Catholic Church proclaims that human life is sacred and that the dignity of the human person is the foundation of a moral vision for society. This belief is the foundation of all the principles of our social teaching." So that, Jacob, is an answer to your question. It sort of starts with that key principle. That's really the core. And actually, in addition, further in the Catholic social teaching, Catholics are also called upon to assist the poor and put the needs of the poor and vulnerable first. This actually called the preferential option for the poor. And also in Catholic theology, that sheltering the homeless is known as one of the works of mercy. And it has its origins in the famous Bible verse that Matthew chapter 25 that Father Jerome read in his video. That chapter of the Bible tells the story of the Last Judgment. It says God was pleased with those who, when I was a stranger, you welcomed me. And that really means they welcomed the homeless into their homes. And interesting, another verse at the end of that chapter 25 really resonates with me personally. And I try to remember when I volunteer in the shelter and keep this in mind. And that's the verse that says basically, "Whatsoever you did to the least of my brothers, that you did unto me." So anyway, my Catholic social teaching background sort of made it really easy for me to involve my church, for example, in projects to help the homeless. I was able to organize our youth ministry program to provide volunteers to work in the shelters. Our church actually, took this on as a regular service project, signing up for the Armory programs at the time. But really, whatever your faith background is, to everyone listening, I'd encourage you to consider volunteering, involving your church, your synagogue, your temple, your mosque, and involve them in helping volunteer to help the homeless. It's really, really rewarding. And when you volunteer, there's a lot of tasks you can do. Many of you listening probably have already done this, but the tasks are small but meaningful, like cleaning the sleeping mats or organizing donated clothes. Or I really enjoyed serving coffee and hot cocoa to the clients. As I did that, I really began to realize that the most important thing I could do was to look the client in the eye and simply offer a smile and a kind word. This really shows that you respect their dignity and the dignity of every one of our brothers and sisters in the shelter. So I thought really that was what I learned coming away from that. It's like you realize how often a lot of people avoid the homeless, and just making eye contact is huge, and showing that you recognize them as a dignified person. Yeah, I think you already pointed out, Jacob, that we're not a Catholic charity. We're inspired by Catholic social teaching, but we don't promote any ideology in our programs that we operate, and we respect guests of all backgrounds. Of course, we hope that when a client secures some stability in their lives, they'll be in sort of a spot where they can contemplate some of the bigger issues in life, such as religious faith. But anyway, Jacob, that's how faith has influenced my work at Mercy House.
Yeah, and that's really good. And yeah, and as a reminder, we've worked with a number of different communities and faith backgrounds, and it is, I think, one of the really cool things that we get to interact with so many different types of people. And yeah, that's just been something that I've really enjoyed, and learning about people who are different than myself. And I mean, obviously in my role, I get to coordinate that kind of thing. So I feel like I'm especially privileged to get that opportunity. So I want to ask you one more question, Ray, and then kind of land this proverbial plane. But I just also wanted to give one more shout out to our little Q&A portion that's coming up. If you have any questions or any of these, anything that you've heard so far has kind of prompted you to ask something, please feel free to drop a line to our chat and just privately message that to the host, and we'll hopefully get some Q&A time at the end of this. But on that note, Ray, maybe as a final thought, what encouragement would you give to folks who are either new to this space and new to the issue of homelessness, or maybe those who want to re-engage and learn more about it?
Sure. Go for it is what I would say. Get over your initial hesitancy if you can. And there are many, many ways to help that don't involve necessarily working, for example, in an emergency shelter. If you're not comfortable with that for whatever reason, there's many ways to donate supplies, hygiene kits, supplies with soap, shampoo, articles of clothing, things that are desperately needed in many of our shelters. So there's a ton of different ways to get involved that hopefully you'll find something you can get involved in incrementally if you haven't before, and get out there and swim in the deep water, give it a try. You'll be so rewarded. And I guess, Jacob, I have to say I've been really, really impressed with the staff of Mercy House. They help volunteers get involved, but the staff who work really directly with the homeless in the shelters and on the streets, they're just awesome people. They're the real saints in my eyes. I mean, so many of them are super enthusiastic. They're so compassionate. I think a lot of them many of them are motivated by a deep Christian faith and love for their fellow man. But I really think it's our caring and dedicated staff that's one of the real secrets to the success of Mercy House. And I really got to tip my hat and send a great shout out to the staff of Mercy House. They're doing great work.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. And we actually have some staff on this call. Maybe if you could maybe just do a quick little wave if you are a staff member here. I see Martha, and I see some others who have their videos muted, but we see you and we appreciate you. So yeah, I just wanted to move into this time of little Q&A. So it's not too late. Throw a question at us if you want. But I got the first question up here. So it's a bit of a carryover question too. I think we had this in our last one, and it's I don't know if we got to fully answer it last time, but it's what do you do for individuals who want to live on the streets? So Ray, if you want to,
I'd love to chat about that. And it's really common. We get that question a lot. And I think it comes down to, it's a little bit of a misconception, because I think many homeless will say that they prefer living on the streets to an alternative that's presented to them. And it depends on that alternative. For example, many alternatives are perceived by the homeless to be burdensome in many ways, and that could be for really good reasons. For example, some of the emergency shelters that are operated here in Orange County have requirements that many homeless cannot comply with. Some of the requirements are that they have a no smoking policy before they can get into the shelter or the housing. Some require religious Bible studies that maybe the homeless aren't ready for. And so those requirements, some actually require, I was told, I think Jacob, you mentioned this to me, that some of the shelters require that you have a car. So obviously, if you're presented with that as an alternative and you're used to living independently in some way on the street, you may not prefer that. But if we're able to build trust with a homeless person and really build trust over time and present them with an attractive alternative, we feel that most of the homeless actually will want to get off the streets. And if they still don't, in some situations, you have to ask yourself if maybe that's a function of not clear thinking and not good judgment. And again, you work over time to build trust and rapport and present the homeless with an alternative that, for example, rapid rehousing, or actually more specifically for the chronically homeless, who may be someone who's lived on the street for a really long time and says that they prefer that. We've found that if you present the chronically homeless with an alternative like the Orchard in Santa Ana, which is for formerly chronically homeless individuals with disabling conditions, substance abuse, if you present them with that kind of an alternative where they can work on their problems in their own apartment, live independently still, they'll prefer that to living on the street. I don't know, maybe that's an oversimplification, but I hope that answered the question.
No, that's really good, Ray. And in full transparency, I've worked with clients for a number of years, and I have heard that before. I've heard them, I've heard folks tell me, "Oh, I'm not interested in your services," or "I'm better out here," or No, really, I'm fine. Like, I don't really want to, in showing off, they don't want to engage with me or another outreach worker. And I think that I would agree with you that that's exactly what's going on is you could have had someone, maybe even someone that I've kind of explained here, they might have had a bad experience in a shelter. Maybe they went to a shelter and maybe the staff weren't overly nice. And maybe they, of course not our shelters, but maybe they had their possessions stolen, or maybe they, maybe they had a very rigid go to bed at this time, wake up at this time, and it reminded them of some traumatic experience that they had in the past. Or I mean, there's a variety of reasons why someone's lived experiences could prevent them from wanting to go back into a shelter. And so, if the alternative is the freedom of living on the streets or an ultra rigid shelter where I have bad experiences, I'm going to pick the streets. But like you said, if the alternative is actual housing, actual home where they feel safe and secure, and they can store their pill bottle here, and they can make sure that they can take their pills on time, and they start to gain a sense of ownership, like, oh, this is mine. I can keep this if I do all the steps that my case managers are suggesting. Then that is a very different situation. And so I would generally agree that I don't think that just because someone says, oh, I want to live on the streets, that actually means that they would prefer that over a home.
Yeah, and if the person asking that question to us has someone in mind that is homeless and is refusing to be helped, you can also contact 211 and ask if perhaps there is an outreach service available to speak with that homeless person and try to work with them to find something that works for them. I guess calling 211 or calling Mercy House as well. We'd love to hear from you if that's your situation.
Yeah, thank you. So another question that we got is, can you expand on the services you have for homeless families, in particular, families at risk of homelessness? I think I can get this one.
Sure.
So with regards to how Mercy House serves families, we serve families in a number of different ways. I think the biggest program that probably serves families in terms of numbers might either be the Homemade Family Care Center that we have. And again, Martha on the call is the program manager there. And we can hold up, not in COVID times, we can hold up to, I believe, almost 60 individual in that shelter in family in about 12 family units. So that shelter allows for families to get access to food and obviously hygiene and showers and a safe place to store their belongings and case management. There's a little computer lab there for the kids to work on their school. We have shuttles that go in and out of there that take them to a special school that really is designed to work with folks in kind of alternative housing situations, and a number of really awesome both volunteer opportunities there and donation opportunities that we have there as well. And when we send a recap email, we'll make sure to talk about some of those opportunities. So that's one of the programs that serves families. But we also have, it's called Rapid Rehousing and Homeless Prevention. Both are programs that serve both individuals and families, but allow for clients to maybe get help finding a unit and then help for a portion of their rent. And then again, those case management wraparound services that help connect them to other things to make them ultimately self-sufficient. So those are the two big programs that I can think of off the top of my head, but really outreach can also encounter families, and our permanent housing also serves low-income at-risk families as well. So that was that question. But another question that we got was, aside from donation of funds, what are some urgent needs of Mercy House from volunteers? So a great question that I think I'll just take real quick. We sent an email out to all of our volunteers, I believe yesterday, and let them know that we have put a hold on some of our volunteer opportunities. And as of right now, all of the shelters that are owned by either the county or the city or by a public entity have continued to keep a hold and a pause on allowing for volunteers to come back. But again, a big plug for FCC. We're talking about the Family Care Center a lot today. that shelter in orange that serves families is actually accepting volunteers. And I think we have a volunteer that's going out there today. So we're really excited to slowly ease our way back into allowing for volunteers to come back on site. We obviously do the temperature checks and we ask to make sure you're not symptomatic, but yeah, we really miss our volunteers, and we're really excited for COVID to be over for a number of reasons. But one of the big reasons being we can see our volunteers again, and we can let them get the opportunity, like Ray shared, to interact with our clients. But
And I would just, yes, Jacob, I agree. And I would add to that, if you can't come in person, we can always use Target gift cards that are used to supply our homeless clients with essentials and underwear, socks, or if they're moving into a rapid housing situation, basic necessities, glasses, plates, pots, and pans. So those Target gift cards work great, and anything you could afford, we would be very grateful for.
And to add, if you will, Jake, to that gift card suggestion, I would also suggest a Visa card, because a number of our guests have cars, but those Visa cards can be used for gas as well. So we get those opportunities and requests often. Ms. Martha, do you have any gas cards? Well, we do get sometimes the Visa card, so we can issue those. And of course, the Visa card can serve in many ways, not only for food and gas and that. And I know some people are hesitant because you can also get alcohol and things with them, but we just pray that they will use them for what they really are needed for. And I think the good outweighs the bad.
that's really good.
Great point.
All right, so we can probably have time for one more question. So I'm going to try and combo a couple questions here, like I do, and kind of land this. So one of the questions was about talking about faith and impact on homelessness, how to reach out to faith-based communities and churches, and what's our intentional outreach around working with churches. And I think that's a really good question, because that is something that we're currently in the process of re-engaging with. And we have Lauren McGonigal on our call. She's our associate development director, and she is the primary person who kind of cultivates those faith-based relationships. So again, in the email recap, we'll definitely connect you to Lauren, because we have tons of ideas that we just can't wait to start moving on. And what's also cool is we know that we don't have all the answers, and so we would love to hear from folks to how specifically you can bring your faith-based community into the work that we're doing. So we partner with churches all the time on donation drives and volunteer opportunities and sponsorships and really everything. So we're happy to do that. And again, we'll send some more information out. And then lastly, really easily, we had a question about connection in the Los Angeles area. So with all of that expansion, we mentioned that we have expanded into Los Angeles County. And one of the ways that you can get involved in Los Angeles County is with our Bellflower shelter. So we have I believe a 50-bed shelter in Bellflower that will eventually be taking volunteers and in-kind donations. And actually, I believe we can take donations now. Volunteers, though, will be on hold for a little bit longer. So, and then real quick, lastly, yes, someone sends a question about Father Jerome's retirement. Father Jerome is retiring after, I don't know, I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but 25 years at his parish. So
yeah, I think it's over 30. And just to be clear, Father Jerome is a full-time pastor at St. Vincent de Paul Church in Huntington Beach. So he's not retiring from Mercy House. He's retiring as the pastor from his church, where he's been full-time employed for over 30 years and leading that church through tremendous growth. So we're delighted he has a chance to retire, but he's indicated he intends to remain involved with Mercy House and still be very involved with Mercy House as a volunteer chairman of the board, as he has been in the past. So we're excited he's going to have more time to spend on Mercy House activities.
Absolutely. And the question was also about, that means we'll see him more at our shelters. And I think we will. I think we'll see him volunteering and getting out there and just helping support all the work that we're doing that he started 30 years ago. So I think that's all the time we have for questions. So if we didn't get any questions, we're going to send a recap email out. Just reply to that email and let us know if there was anything that was left unanswered. But I just wanted to spend this last few minutes here to let you know about just the general project that we're working on here with Help Them Home. So again, this is our 4th installment of our Help Them Home Zoomcast, and we're going to be sending a link out to all the other videos. So if you missed any of the other installments, please check out that email and you can go back and watch one of those other videos that I shared about earlier. And again, it's a part of this thing called Help Them Home. And as a reminder, for those of you who this is your first episode, Help Them Home is a 24-hour giving day where 18 organizations are all coming together to raise $1 million collectively. And Mercy House has set it to be our goal to raise $50,000. And we're really excited because we're already chugging along on that goal. And so we actually have had 2 people come forward and make large matching donation gifts. So every dollar that they've given is going to be matched by money that they've already put in for us. So we had a board member anonymously donate $5,000. So every dollar that gets donated for up to $5,000 is basically matched by his or her dollar for dollar match. So it really helps us stretch that donation farther. And we also want to give a big thank you to Eastside Christian Church, who, again, you heard from Erica Flora 2 episodes ago, and she just let us know yesterday that Eastside Christian has donated $7,500 in a similar matching gift. So we're already up to $12,000 and $12,500 towards our $50,000 goal. So the way that you can actually help us reach that rest of that up to $50,000 is obviously donating. We would love for you to make a small contribution if you are able. But almost more importantly than that, we would love for you to share about what we're doing here and tell your friends. And again, in the recap email we're going to be sending out, we'll send out a link to where all the donations will go on April 28th, that 24-hour day I was talking about, which is next Wednesday. And on there, you can click a little button and create an account of your own and share that to your friends and tell people why they should support Mercy House. And that just helps us extend our reach even more. So letting more people know about the amazing work that our staff and volunteers and board is doing. And it'll also help increase people's ability to find out how to donate and how to support and how to, what their dollars go towards. And something that I think people are always really surprised about is that for every dollar that goes to us, it only 7 cents actually goes to admin, and everything else goes to direct client services. So every dollar is really going to make a huge impact, and even more so because it's literally going to helping people get off of the streets. And we really just can't thank you enough for everyone for joining in on this call. And if you have any more questions about how to get involved with that, we'll be sending an email out. But I think actually I wanted to let Ray share one more quick thing.
Just really quick, Jacob, as a final note, I really wanted to give a shout out and a huge thank you to you and the amazing staff at Mercy House, you and Lauren McGonigal and Anna Earl and so many others for putting together this amazing 4-part Zoomcast on homelessness. It's been really wonderful. Been so impressed with the previous speakers over the last 4 weeks. The stories I've heard from the speakers like artist Damian Lujan and Brian Peterson, for example, just truly inspiring. And it's really heartwarming to see this outpouring of support in our community for the homeless. So thanks again, Jacob and Mercy House staff for this amazing project and for allowing me to be part of it.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you for everyone for coming. Check us out April 28th, 24 hours from midnight to midnight. We'll be raising $50,000. So just follow us on social media and look for the emails, and we'll be keeping in touch. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.